thought my husband was betraying me with my sister. Then I found the documents they hid and realized the real secret had been buried in my mother's house for decades. The first time I realized my husband might be betraying me with my sister, he was asleep beside me. Daniel had always slept heavily, not peacefully. There is a difference. Peaceful sleepers look innocent. Daniel looked exhausted, even unconscious. One hand curled near his chest, forehead tense, like part of him was still sitting in a conference room somewhere arguing with people. It was 1:17 in the morning. His phone lit up on the nightstand. "Claire, she still doesn't know." I can't keep doing this. I stared at the message. My sister, my younger sister, Claire. For a few seconds, I tried to make the sentence mean something harmless. Maybe they were planning my birthday. Maybe Claire had asked Daniel for help with money. Maybe there was some family problem they were trying not to burden me with. Then another message appeared. "Daniel, give me until Friday. Once she signs, it won't matter." My stomach went cold. Once she signs. I reached for the phone. Daniel moved. I froze. His breathing changed for half a second, then deepened again. "I should tell you something about myself before I tell you what I did next. I have never been good with uncertainty. Some people can sit with an unanswered question. I cannot. When my father disappeared from our lives when I was 14, I spent 3 months calling hospitals because my mother kept saying he needs space. When my mother got sick years later and refused to tell us how serious it was, I found the name of her oncologist on an insurance statement and called the office pretending I needed appointment records. When Daniel proposed to me, I already knew he had bought the ring because I had accidentally seen the charge on our shared credit card. I tell myself I like truth. Daniel says I like control. At 1:19 in the morning, I used the passcode I had watched him enter 100 times. The messages with Claire went back 4 months. Not romantic. That almost made it worse. There were no hearts, no flirting, no photos, just meetings, dates, documents, and language I did not understand. Revised deed, constructive trust, beneficial ownership, Mercer property review, then one message from Claire. "If Nora finds out before we have everything, she'll shut it down. You know how she is about Mom." I stopped breathing. The Mercer property, my mother's house, not the house Daniel and I lived in. The house, the 3-story brick Georgian on Monument Avenue in Richmond that had belonged to my mother for 32 years. The house where Claire and I grew up. The house where my mother held fundraisers beneath crystal chandeliers and hosted Christmas dinners for judges, hospital board members, professors, ministers, donors, and people who liked seeing their names engraved on brass plaques. After my mother died, she left the house to me. Not to Claire, me. Claire received money, investments, and a small cottage near Charlottesville. I received Mercer House and control of the Elaine Mercer Foundation. For 11 years, Claire had pretended she was fine with that. Apparently, she wasn't. I kept scrolling. A PDF had been attached 3 weeks earlier. I opened it. Proposed transfer of title, 4118 Monument Avenue. My hands began shaking. The proposed recipient was not Claire. It was a trust. The Helen Walker Restitution Trust. I had never heard that name. Below it was another document. Draft resignation paperwork removing me as sole trustee of the Mercer Foundation. I looked at Daniel sleeping beside me, my husband of 12 years, the man who had stood beside me at my mother's funeral while I shook so badly he had to hold the umbrella. The man who knew I had spent a decade preserving everything my mother built, and he had been helping my sister prepare to take it away from me. I put his phone back. Then I lay awake until morning. At 6:40, Daniel came downstairs in navy slacks and a white shirt, tying his cuff while I stood at the kitchen island drinking coffee. "Morning," he said. I watched him kiss my temple. That almost broke me. "Sleep okay?" "Fine." He opened the refrigerator. "You want eggs?" "No." He glanced at me. "You sure?" "I have an early call." That was a lie. I had no call. What I had was my mother's silver fountain pen sitting inside my desk upstairs, the pen she used when she signed the will. By 8:15, Daniel was gone. At 8:32, I called Martin Shaw. Martin had handled my mother's estate. He was 70 now, semi-retired, and still spoke as if every sentence were being dictated into a legal record. "Nora." "Martin, I need to know if anyone has contacted you regarding Mercer House." Silence. Too much silence. "Martin?" "I think this is a conversation better had in person." That was my answer. Who contacted you? Nora. Was it Claire? Another silence. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because something about betrayal becomes almost elegant when enough people are participating. Did Daniel contact you too? Martin sighed. Come to my office. I'm asking you a direct question, and I'm advising you not to react until you understand the circumstances. That sentence made me angrier than if he had simply lied. Everyone knew. Everyone but me. I hung up. Then I drove to Mercer House. The house had been mostly unused since my mother died. I kept a caretaker. The foundation occasionally held board dinners there. Otherwise, I treated it the way some families treat graves. Maintained, polished, untouched. When I opened the front door, the familiar smell hit me first. Old wood, lemon polish, cold stone, and something floral that probably existed only in my memory because my mother had worn the same gardenia perfume for 20 years. Her portrait still hung above the library fireplace. Elaine Mercer at 58, silver blonde hair, pearls, straight shoulders. The expression of a woman who had never entered a room wondering whether she belonged there. I stood beneath the portrait. Were you in on this too? I whispered. Ridiculous question. Dead people are excellent at keeping secrets. I went upstairs. At the end of the second-floor hall was a white door. Nothing unusual about it except that it was locked. It had always been locked. When we were children, Claire and I called it the blue room because the curtains inside had once been blue. My mother kept old records there. After she got sick, she made me promise I would leave the room alone. Not forever. She never said forever, she said. There are things that no longer matter, Nora. Please let me leave without turning my mistakes into your burden. I had been 30, terrified, desperate for every good day she still had. So I promised. After she died, I kept promising. 11 years. The key was not on the property ring. It never had been. I tried the handle anyway. Locked. My phone buzzed. Claire. I stared at her name until the call stopped. Then a text arrived. Can we have dinner tonight? Just you and me. Please. I typed. Does Daniel know you're asking? 3 dots appeared. Vanished. Appeared again. Yes. That answer hurt in a place I had not expected. I called my attorney. Not Martin. My own. Rebecca Lang. Rebecca, I want an emergency review of every authority connected to Mercer House and the foundation. What happened? I think someone is trying to remove me. Who? My sister. I looked at my mother's portrait downstairs. And possibly my husband. By noon, Rebecca had confirmed what I needed to know. No transfer could happen without my signature. I was the sole legal owner of the house. I was also controlling trustee of the foundation. Whatever Claire and Daniel were planning, they needed me. That should have calmed me. Instead, it gave me leverage, and I used it. This is the part of the story where people like to imagine they would behave perfectly. They would confront everyone calmly, ask reasonable questions, listen, gather information. Maybe they would. I did not. At 2 o'clock, I called an emergency foundation board meeting for Friday morning. At 3, I asked Rebecca to prepare Claire's removal from her advisory role. At 4, I changed the access codes at Mercer House. At 5, I froze discretionary foundation grants that Claire oversaw. At 6, Daniel came home. He found me sitting at the dining table. The documents from his phone were printed and stacked in front of me. His face changed before he even removed his coat. Nora, I pushed the transfer document toward him. What is this? He did not pretend. That almost offended me more. He set his briefcase down slowly. You went through my phone. What is this? Nora, we need to talk. You and Claire have been talking for 4 months. He pulled out a chair. I said, Don't sit. His hand stopped. For the first time in 12 years, my husband looked uncertain in his own dining room. Are you sleeping with her? His face went blank. With Claire? Yes. My sister? Nora, no. Then why are you meeting secretly? I can explain. Explain the deed. He looked down at the document, then back at me. You need to hear the whole thing. I'm listening, but I wasn't. That matters. I can admit it now. At the time, I believed listening meant staying quiet long enough for the other person to speak. It doesn't. Listening requires the possibility that they might change your mind. I had already decided. Daniel pulled out his phone. There's a woman named Helen Walker. I saw the trust. She has a connection to your mother. What connection? He hesitated. That hesitation was fatal. To the house, he said. I laughed softly. No. Nora. No one has a connection to that house except my family. Daniel's expression changed, not anger, sadness. I think that's exactly the problem. I stood. Get out. He stared at me. Nora, please. You were preparing illegal documents to remove property from me without telling me. We were preparing documents so we could show you a complete solution. A solution to what? Something your mother did. I slapped my palm against the table. Do not do that. He went quiet. Do not turn my mother into your excuse. Nora, you barely knew her. I knew enough. That sentence landed like a slap. I walked around the table. Get out of my house. Our house. Then go to Claire's. His face tightened. You know this isn't about Claire and me. I know my husband lied to me for 4 months. I did. Good. We agree. I lied because every time Claire tried to mention Helen, you shut her down. I frowned. She has never mentioned Helen. She mentioned the locked room. My body went still. Daniel saw it. There are tiny betrayals the body commits when the mind wants to lie. A pause, a breath, a pupil tightening. He saw mine. You know something, he said. I know my mother asked me not to open that room. Why? Because she was dying. That isn't an answer. It was enough for me. Daniel studied my face. Then he said very quietly, That's what Claire was afraid of. I opened the front door. Leave. He did, but before he walked past me, he stopped. I have never cheated on you. I said nothing. I have never wanted your sister. Nothing. But I did betray you. That made me look at him. He swallowed. I decided you could not be trusted with the truth until we had a way to force you to look at it. My throat tightened. That isn't betrayal. It is. He nodded once. And I am sorry for it. Then he left. At 9:30 that night, Claire showed up. I watched her through the security camera for almost a minute before opening the door. She looked cold. Not physically. Claire had always looked slightly cold around me after Mom died, like she was standing near a window I had forgotten to close. You fired me, she said. I removed you from an advisory role. You froze the grants. Temporarily. 3 housing organizations depend on those funds. They'll survive a review. Claire stared at me. You really did exactly what we thought you would. I folded my arms. That seems to be everyone's favorite sentence this week. She walked past me without asking. Claire, she turned. I came to tell you before Friday because after Friday, I don't know if I'll still want to. Tell me what? Her eyes moved toward the staircase. The room, I laughed. You too. Nora, why do you think Mom left the house to you? Because I ran the foundation with her. No. Because I took care of her. No. My jaw tightened. Claire's eyes filled, but she did not cry. She had learned years ago that crying in front of me made me less sympathetic, not more, because you were the only one who promised not to open it. Silence. I felt something cold move under my ribs. That is ridiculous. Is it? She made the will before that conversation. 6 weeks before. Exactly. She amended it 12 days after. I stared at her. Claire reached into her purse. She placed a photocopy on the table. A codicil. Signed by my mother. Mercer House changed from equal ownership between Claire and me to sole ownership by me, 12 days after my promise. I read it twice, then 3 times. You knew about this. I found it after Mom died. How? Martin showed me. Martin violated confidentiality? He represented the estate. I was a beneficiary. I looked at the paper. Claire said, I thought she loved you more. My eyes lifted. Claire gave a broken little laugh. You want the ugly truth? For years I thought that was it. You were the responsible one. You were with her at the end. You looked like her. You ran the foundation. She trusted you. Claire, I hated you for getting the house. That surprised me. Not because I did not suspect it, because Claire had never admitted it. I hated every Christmas when people told me how beautifully you were preserving Mom's legacy. I hated your foundation speeches. I hated watching you stand under her portrait and talk about integrity. Her voice cracked on the last word. I stood very still. Then 2 years ago, Martin called me. Why? Because somebody contacted him. Helen. Claire nodded. She had waited until her father died. Who was her father? Claire looked at me. Thomas Walker. The name meant nothing. Then something moved at the edge of memory. A man in a brown work jacket. A toolbox. The back staircase at Mercer House. Tom? I said. Claire nodded. Tom Walker had been our mother's property manager when we were children. He fixed pipes, painted shutters, changed light bulbs 20 feet above the ballroom floor without a ladder tall enough to make anyone feel comfortable. He gave Claire and me peppermint candy at Christmas. He disappeared when I was 15. Mom said he stole from her. I had not thought about him in 20 years. Claire reached into her bag again. This time she took out a photograph. It was old. Polaroid. My mother, younger than I had ever known her, standing on the front steps of Mercer House beside a black woman in a yellow dress. The woman was smiling. My mother was not. On the back, in faded ink, someone had written, "Elaine and Ruth, April 1983. We finally did it." "Who is Ruth?" "Helen's mother." Something inside me tightened. Claire continued, "Ruth Walker and Mom bought Mercer House together." I stared at her. "No, they did." "No, Mom bought it after Granddad died." That's the story she told us. She had family money. Some. Claire tapped the photograph. Not enough. I pushed it away. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Ruth Walker put up more than half the purchase money." "Then where is her name on the deed?" Claire's expression changed. That was the first moment I became afraid. "It was supposed to be added later." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You expect me to believe Mom stole a house?" "I expect you to open the room." "I promised her." "She's dead, Nora." The words hit harder than they should have. Claire saw it and softened for half a second. Then she said, "Ruth died without ever getting her share back." I turned away. "Leave. Nora, leave." "She had a daughter." "I know." "Helen grew up believing her mother lost everything because she trusted ours." I faced her. "And you believe a stranger over Mom?" "No." Claire's voice became very quiet. "I believe Mom." I stopped. Claire reached into her bag one last time. A small digital recorder. I found one recording in Martin's files. She pressed play. Static. Then my mother's voice. Older, weak, but unmistakable. "If Nora ever opens the room, she will understand why I could not." Claire stopped the recording. I could hear my own heartbeat. "Where did you get that?" "Martin." "Why does he have it?" "Because Mom gave him instructions." "What instructions?" "To give you 1 year after her death." I stared at Claire. "She died 11 years ago." "I know." "What happened?" "He came to you." My mouth went dry. "No." "Yes." "He never—" Then I remembered. Martin. My mother's funeral had been 6 days earlier. He came to Mercer House carrying a gray envelope. He asked me to sit. I told him I was too busy. He said my mother left additional personal instructions. I told him anything related to the estate could wait. He came back 2 weeks later. I refused again. A month later, he called. I told his assistant I did not want to discuss any private messages my mother left. I had forgotten. No, that is too generous. I had chosen not to remember. Claire watched my face. "You knew there was something." "I did not know what." "You knew enough to avoid it." "I was grieving." "For 11 years?" I flinched. She saw it. "Open the room." "No." "Nora." "No." Her face hardened. "Then don't ever say this is about protecting Mom." She picked up her bag. "This is about protecting you." After she left, I sat alone in the dining room until after midnight. I wish I could tell you I opened the room immediately. I didn't. Friday morning, I removed Claire from the foundation board. The vote was 5-2. Daniel did not attend. Claire did. She sat at the far end of the polished walnut table while I explained that undisclosed efforts to transfer foundation-adjacent assets represented a serious governance violation. I sounded good. Very good. That was one of my talents. I could turn pain into minutes, betrayal into procedure, fear into policy. One board member, Arthur Wells, frowned. "Claire, did you actually attempt to transfer the property?" "No." "Did you draft documents?" "Yes." "Without Nora?" "Yes." Arthur looked at me. "That is concerning." Claire said, "Ask her what Helen Walker means." The room changed. I felt it. A few people looked confused. 2 did not. That frightened me more than anything else. I turned to them. "You know that name?" Arthur looked down. The other Reverend Bishop rubbed his thumb against his wedding ring. Claire laughed bitterly. "Oh, my God." I stood. "What?" She looked around the table. "They knew, too." Arthur said, "Nora, your mother asked some of us to respect her privacy." "My mother has been dead 11 years." No one answered. My voice sharpened. "What did she do?" Arthur looked at Claire, then at me. "I think you need to see what she left you." The meeting ended without a final vote. I went straight to Mercer House. This time I brought a locksmith. His name was Miguel, mid-50s, gray beard. Polite enough not to ask why the owner of a mansion needed someone to open one bedroom. He worked for 8 minutes. The lock clicked. "Do you want me to go in first?" he asked. "No." He handed me the old brass cylinder. "Looks original." I paid him, then stood alone in the hall. The door opened with resistance because the rug had bunched underneath it. Dust moved through the light. The room was smaller than I remembered. Blue curtains, a writing desk, metal filing cabinets, cardboard archive boxes, no dramatic safe, no pile of stolen cash, no secret second family waiting in photographs, just paper. Human beings ruin one another with paper more often than movies admit. The first box contained property records. The second contained foundation correspondence. The third had Ruth Walker's name. I sat on the floor. There were letters, dozens. Ruth to Elaine, Elaine to Ruth. At first they were warm, almost intimate in the way friendships between young women can be before life teaches them to keep score. They had met while working at a community development nonprofit. Both wanted to create transitional housing for women leaving abusive homes. Mercer House was not originally meant to be a private residence. It was supposed to become a residential program. Ruth had inherited money from an aunt. My mother had access to donors. Together they planned to buy the building. Then my mother's father died. She became pregnant with me. The project stalled, and somewhere in those years, something changed. I found a letter from Ruth dated September 1986. "Elaine, I am not asking for charity. I am asking for my name to be placed on what I paid for. Another. You keep telling me another month. Tom says I should get a lawyer. I keep telling him you are my friend. Please do not make me regret defending you. Another. Helen is 3 now. I cannot keep explaining to my husband why our savings are trapped in a house where we have no legal claim. My hands started shaking. Then I found my mother's replies. Not evil. That would have been easier. Afraid, defensive, self-justifying. The title issue is temporary. My father's estate is complicated. The foundation donors will panic if ownership appears divided. Please trust me. Then finally, I cannot alter the deed while the refinancing is pending. But she could have. Attached to that letter was a note from a banker. The refinancing had closed months earlier. I kept reading. In 1994, Ruth threatened legal action. In 1995, my mother accused Tom Walker of embezzling from the property maintenance account. He was fired. Ruth's legal claim disappeared shortly afterward. Then I found an internal memo. My mother had discovered irregularities in the maintenance account, but Tom had not taken the money. Her own foundation treasurer had moved funds to cover unauthorized expenses. My mother knew. Tom still took the blame. Why? Because Tom had Ruth's records. He could prove where the house money came from. The room tilted. I stood too fast and knocked over a box. A cassette tape slid across the floor. White label. My name. Nora, when you are ready. I stared at it for a long time. There was an old cassette player in the desk drawer. Of course there was. My mother had planned the whole experience. Even dead, Elaine Mercer knew how to stage a room. I pressed play, static, then breathing, her breathing, weak, close to the microphone. Nora, I covered my mouth. I have rewritten this message 4 times because every version made me sound either innocent or monstrous, and I was neither. I sat down. I loved Ruth Walker. A pause. She was my closest friend. Another breath. And I stole from her. My eyes closed. I did not wake one morning and decide to steal a house. That would almost be comforting. I delayed. I justified. I told myself ownership was temporary. I told myself I was protecting our project. Then I was protecting my marriage. Then my reputation. Then the foundation. Her voice shook. Every year I failed to fix it made fixing it more expensive. I started crying. Quietly, my mother continued. When Tom threatened to expose me, I allowed suspicion to remain on him even after I knew he had done nothing wrong. I whispered, Mom. I told myself I was protecting my daughters. A long silence. Parents say that when they are protecting themselves. I looked at the portrait-sized dust mark on the wall where something had once hung. You were 14 when you overheard Ruth and me arguing. My body went completely still. No, I had forgotten that. No, I remembered. The kitchen. Late at night. Ruth crying. My mother saying, You cannot do this to my family. Ruth saying, Your family is living inside what you took from mine. I had stood behind the pantry door. The next morning, my mother asked if I heard anything. I said no. She stared at me for a long time, then hugged me. I never told anyone, not Claire, not my father, not later when Tom disappeared from our lives, not when I grew old enough to understand what Ruth might have meant. My mother's voice continued, "I think you remember." I could not breathe. "You were always more like me than Claire." That sentence hurt, not because it was cruel, because for most of my life I had considered it praise. You know how to survive by arranging facts into a version you can live with. I stopped the tape. I could not hear any more. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, maybe 30. Then my phone rang. Daniel. I almost ignored him. Instead, I answered. "Where are you?" His voice was careful. "At the house." Silence. "Did you open it?" "Yes." Another silence. Then he said, "I'm sorry." I laughed through tears. "For what?" "For not telling you." "You tried." "Not enough." "No." I looked around the room. "You decided you knew what I would do." "I was afraid you'd destroy the evidence." My head snapped up. "Is that what you think of me?" "I didn't know." It was terrible that I could not immediately tell him he was wrong. "I need to meet Helen." Daniel exhaled. "Okay. Today. She may not agree. Then ask." "She's not waiting for an apology, Nora." "I know." I did not. Not yet. Helen Walker came to Mercer House at 5:30 that evening. She was 51, short gray curls, navy coat, no makeup except dark red lipstick. She carried no folders, no lawyers, just an old brass key. When I opened the door, she looked past me into the foyer. Her face changed, not dramatically, just enough. "You look like Elaine," she said. I hated hearing it. "I'm sorry," Helen almost smiled. "I haven't accused you of anything yet." Daniel stood near the library doorway. Claire sat inside. I had asked both of them to come, partly because I did not trust myself, partly because I finally understood what secrecy had already cost us. Helen held up the key. "My father kept this until he died." "What does it open?" "The old rear gate." I frowned. She looked at me. "Your mother changed the locks after she fired him." I felt sick. Helen walked through the foyer slowly. She touched nothing. At the library door, she stopped beneath my mother's portrait. For a long time, she stared. Claire said quietly, "Helen, I'm fine." She wasn't. None of us were. We sat. I had prepared a speech. Of course I had. I had written it on foundation stationery, then hated myself and ripped it up. So I just said, "I believe you." Helen looked at me. "That is a very comfortable sentence." I swallowed. "I read the records." "Good." "I heard my mother's tape." "Good." "I want to return the house." Claire looked at me sharply. Daniel did not move. Helen's expression barely changed. "No." I blinked. "You don't want it?" I did. "What changed?" 23 years. She crossed one leg over the other. My mother died in a rental apartment in Norfolk. My father died still angry enough to keep a key to a gate that no longer recognized him. Her voice stayed calm. "I have a home, a husband, 2 daughters, a career. I do not want to move into your mother's monument." "It was your mother's, too." Helen looked toward the window. "It was supposed to be." I leaned forward. "Then tell me what you want." She met my eyes. "The truth. I can release the records." "All of them?" "Yes." Claire glanced at me. Helen noticed. "All of them?" I understood what she was asking. Not just my mother's letters, not just the fraudulent accusation against Tom. My role. The fact that I had overheard enough at 14 to ask questions. The fact that Martin tried to deliver my mother's confession and I refused it. The fact that after becoming an adult, a lawyer, and eventually head of the foundation, I preserved a story I had reasons to suspect was false. My throat tightened. "Yes." Helen sat back. "Then we can talk." Daniel looked at me. I did not look at him. Over the next 72 hours, we built a restitution plan. Not the one Daniel and Claire had drafted. That mattered to me at first. Then I realized how childish that was. Their plan transferred Mercer House into a trust-controlled, partly by the foundation. Helen refused. "I don't want Elaine Mercer's institution supervising its own repentance." Fair. So we proposed something different. Sell Mercer House. Not quietly, publicly. Use the proceeds to create an independent housing fund in Ruth Walker's name. Return the original investment, adjusted through forensic accounting, directly to Helen and Ruth's estate. Release a public statement correcting Tom Walker's record. Commission an external investigation into the foundation's early finances. and remove the Mercer name from the Transitional Housing Program. Claire wanted to remove my mother's name from the entire foundation. I resisted. That was our first real fight after the truth came out. "You still don't get it," Claire said. We were standing in the kitchen at Mercer House surrounded by cardboard boxes. "I get it perfectly. No, you think accountability means destroying every good thing Mom ever did. I think pretending her philanthropy cancels theft is disgusting." "I did not say it cancels anything." "Then why are you protecting the name?" "Because hundreds of people who had nothing to do with this depend on the organization." Claire shook her head. "There you are. What does that mean?" "The reasonable explanation." I stared at her. She softened. "Nora, sometimes you're right." That surprised me. "Mom did good things," Claire continued. "She also harmed people. Both can exist." I folded my arms. "Then what are we arguing about? Whether you can tolerate other people knowing both." That shut me up. 2 days later, the board received my proposed disclosure package. Arthur Wells called me immediately. "Do not release this." "I'm going to." "Nora, listen to me. We can compensate the Walker family privately." "No." "The foundation funds 8 shelters." "I know." "We have a $12 million hospital partnership pending." "I know." "This could destroy Elaine's reputation." I looked at the portrait in my office. For 11 years, I had spent part of every day protecting a dead woman's reputation. What if it deserves to be changed? Arthur lowered his voice. "Your mother is not here to defend herself." "No," I said. "But Ruth Walker isn't here either." That afternoon, Daniel came home. He had been staying at a hotel, not because I kicked him out permanently, because neither of us knew what marriage looked like after a betrayal committed for what he believed was the right reason. He placed his wedding ring on the kitchen counter. I stared at it. "What are you doing?" "I don't know yet." That scared me more than if he had asked for divorce. He sat across from me. "You were right." "About what?" "I betrayed you." I laughed without humor. "We have covered that." "No, I kept trying to justify it because I thought the outcome mattered more." His eyes were tired. "That is exactly what your mother did." The sentence cut cleanly. I hated him for saying it, because he was right. Daniel continued. "I thought I was protecting Helen." "You were." "I thought I was protecting Claire." "You were." "And I treated you like an obstacle instead of my wife." I looked away. "You didn't trust me." "No. Do you now?" He took a long time answering. "More than I did. It wasn't romantic. It was honest. That hurt less." "What happens to us?" I asked. "I don't know." I looked at his ring. "Are you leaving?" "I think we need to stop making permanent promises while we are still learning what our promises cost other people." That sounded like something a therapist would say. Normally, I would have rolled my eyes. Instead, I nodded. He moved into an apartment 6 blocks away. We did not divorce. We did not reconcile. Not then. Real consequences are often less satisfying than revenge. They do not arrive with orchestral music. Sometimes the consequence of betrayal is simply that the person who loves you no longer feels safe making breakfast beside you. The public statement went out on a Tuesday morning. By 8:06, the Richmond Times had called. By 8:17, 2 board members resigned. By 8:40, a donor withdrew a $3 million pledge. At 9:11, someone posted an old photograph of my mother beside Ruth. At 10:03, my inbox crashed. The headline hurt. Mercer Foundation admits founder concealed co-owner's stake in historic property. The second headline hurt more. Daughter says she ignored warning signs for years. That was my line. I insisted they include it. My attorney advised against it. Daniel asked once if I was sure. Claire said nothing. Helen stared at me for a long time, then nodded. The statement said, "As a teenager, I overheard a dispute that I did not fully understand. As an adult, I had opportunities to investigate my mother's private records and chose not to." Grief explains that choice. It does not erase its consequences. People hated that sentence. Some said I was brave. I hated those comments more. Bravery would have been opening the room 11 years earlier. This was repair. Repair is what you do after courage arrives late. For 3 months, Mercer House sat empty while the sale was arranged. People left flowers at the gate. Some for my mother, some for Ruth. Someone spray-painted thief on the brick wall. I did not remove it for 2 days. Then Helen called me. "Paint over it." I was surprised. "Why?" "Because accountability is not the same as public vandalism." I almost laughed. "Yes, ma'am." "That sounded like your mother." We both went quiet. Then Helen said, "Sorry, no." I looked out my office window. "You're right. The house sold for $4.8 million. Less than people expected. More than Ruth ever received." The Walker Housing Trust opened 9 months later. Helen refused to serve as chair. Instead, she chose a housing attorney from Norfolk and a former shelter director from Richmond. Claire joined the advisory council. I did not. That surprised everyone, especially me. The Mercer Foundation survived. Barely. We lost donors. We lost prestige. We lost the hospital naming partnership. 3 institutions removed my mother's name from rooms she had funded. But something strange happened after that. Smaller donors arrived. People who said they trusted an institution more after watching it admit what it had hidden. Not enough to replace the money, enough to continue. A year after the scandal, Claire and I were having coffee when she said, "Do you still hate me?" I looked at her. "Yes." She laughed. I smiled. "A little." "Fair. I hate that you went behind my back." "I know. I hate that you and Daniel decided you were smarter than me." "We were wrong." "You were." She took a sip. "Do you hate me for being right about Mom?" That question took longer. "No," I said. "I hate how badly I needed you to be wrong." Claire's eyes filled. Then she said something I still think about. "I spent years believing you got more of Mom because she loved you more." I looked down at my coffee. Turns out she gave me the house because she knew I was better at keeping doors closed. Claire reached across the table. Her hand stopped halfway. She did not touch mine. That was new, respecting the distance. "I don't think she only used you," she said. "No?" "No." Claire looked out the window. "I think she trusted you with the ugliest part of herself because she believed one day you might become stronger than she was." I laughed softly. "That is a generous interpretation." "Maybe." Then she looked at me. "Generosity isn't always a lie. Daniel and I stayed separated for 14 months. People always ask what he did during that time, as if there must have been a grand gesture. There wasn't. He did not send flowers. He did not stand in the rain. He did not buy me jewelry. He went to counseling. So did I. He resigned from representing the foundation on any legal matter. He apologized to Helen without explaining himself. He apologized to Claire. And 6 months after the house sold, he asked me to dinner. I said no. 3 weeks later, he asked again. I said yes. We ate at a small Italian restaurant near Carytown. No candles, no dramatic confession. At one point he said, "I still think about the night you found the messages." "So do I." "I should have told you." "Yes." "You might have stopped us." "Yes." "You might have destroyed the records." I looked at him. "Maybe." He nodded. That was the moment I knew there might still be a marriage underneath everything. Not because he forgave me, because he finally stopped pretending to know which version of me would have existed under pressure. I reached for my water. "Do you trust me now?" He smiled sadly. "I trust you enough not to answer quickly." I smiled too. "Better." We started over slowly, not from zero. People say that when they want romance to sound clean. You never start from zero with someone who knows where you keep your worst memories. We started from 12 years of love, 4 months of deception, 1 locked room, and a dead woman's confession. Messy numbers, real numbers. 2 years after Helen first walked into Mercer House, the Walker Housing Trust opened its first residence. 24 apartments for women rebuilding after domestic abuse. Exactly the kind of place Ruth and my mother had once wanted to create together. There was a small plaque in the lobby. Helen wrote the wording. It did not mention Elaine Mercer. It said, "Ruth Walker House, built in honor of promises that should have been kept." I stood in front of it for a long time. Helen came beside me. "You okay?" "Yes." She looked at me. "You don't have to say yes when the answer is complicated." I laughed. "I'm learning." Across the lobby, Claire was talking to one of the staff members. Daniel was helping assemble folding chairs because someone had ordered 30 chairs and received 16. Ordinary chaos. No reporters. No portraits, no Mercer name engraved in marble. Helen held something out to me. The old brass key. I looked at it. "The gate key?" "My father kept it for 23 years. "I know." "I don't want it anymore." I did not take it. "What should I do with it?" She shrugged. "Throw it away." "That feels wrong." Helen smiled. "That is because your family has a terrible habit of turning objects into monuments." I laughed. Then she became serious. "My father thought keeping that key meant he had not surrendered." She looked at the little piece of brass. "But sometimes holding proof that you were wronged becomes another way the wrong keeps owning you. I took the key. Later that evening, I drove alone to the empty lot behind Mercer House. The new owners had already started renovations. The old rear gate had been removed. There was nowhere for the key to fit anymore. I stood there under a Virginia summer sky, holding something my mother had once made useless. For years I thought betrayal was the moment someone chose another person over you. Daniel choosing secrecy, Claire choosing Helen, my mother choosing reputation. But that was not the lesson. The worst betrayals in my family had been committed by people who kept telling themselves they were protecting someone. My mother protected us. Daniel protected the truth. Claire protected Helen. And I protected my mother's memory. Every one of us had a reason. Reasons are dangerous things. Given enough time, they can make almost any cruelty feel responsible. I dropped the key into a public recycling bin. Not dramatic, no tears, no music, just metal hitting metal. Then I walked back to my car. For most of my life, I believed loyalty meant standing beside the people you loved when the world misunderstood them. Now I think loyalty has a harder requirement. Sometimes you have to be willing to become the person they hate because you refuse to help them hide from what they did. And sometimes the person you have to stop protecting is yourself.